Kevin, you're a good man. Thanks for making time for us this morning.
Sean.
It's an obvious downside surprise on the jobs report. The three-month average has dropped to 6K. I think some people looking at this report at the headline level might be a bit nervous about what's inside it. Are there some one-offs here that make this look worse than maybe it is?
Yeah, there are a few. First of all, we had the crazy weather in February. The worst of it was actually outside of the survey week, but there was a lot of lingering junk, as you might recall, with the ice that was everywhere. We had some strikes on the West Coast that knocked off between 30 and 40,000 jobs. And so I think that on net, it's almost like a wash number. And the final thing is that there's a new procedure, birth-death model at the BLS, which we believe is going to make the number more volatile. And so I think more and more we're going to have to average through the months. And remember, we had a really surprisingly positive number last month. And I think if you average the two, then it's about at the rate of job growth that's consistent with 3 or 4% GDP growth.
Kevin, it goes against the grain as well. ISM data earlier this week was really pretty decent. Claims were stable too. Next time we speak next month, do you expect to have a better story to tell?
Yeah, I think that right now what's going to happen, right, is that the variability in the data will be apparent to folks. And so what's going to happen, I think, is that there'll be some anxiety that another number like this or 2 or 3 numbers like this is ahead for us. But we really don't believe that because, as you and I have discussed, like every other indicator is consistent with very strong GDP growth right now. And so this really is an outlier number.
Tax refunds are a big part of the bull case for the US economy. I've got the Bloomberg lighting up in front of me right now with energy prices surging. How those refunds are going to be spent is key, Kevin, with energy bills still climbing. What's your assessment of the disruption we're seeing to supply in the Middle East?
Well, our expectation is that we've got our eyes on the horizon, that we know that sometime soon we're going to have a much more stable Venezuela with high, stable energy output, a much more stable Iran with high and stable energy output, which is going to be very good not only for energy markets, but for risk premia around the world. Don't forget that this move against Iran is happening because they've promised to destroy us all. Like if that's not something that affects risk premia, I don't know what is. And so I think with an eye on the horizon, then you can see that this is a huge positive for the global economy and global markets. The question is, when will the current near-term disruption end? And that's something that'll be decided by the military. And of course, will be some uncertainty about when they decide to move, in part because the uncertainty protects the lives of American soldiers.
Kevin, in the meantime,
but we expect that it'll be resolved, quite soon.
As you see, we're starting to see a hit to production. Because we can't move the oil, we're breaching storage capacity in select producers right now. You saw some of that with Iraq earlier this week. The Journal reporting moments ago, we're seeing the same thing in Kuwait, and UAE and Saudi Arabia might follow. That's obviously a bigger, more acute issue for the Asian refiners right now, which is why the Treasury Secretary came out and issued a waiver for the Indians to buy from Russia, the Russian crude that's offshore in tankers right now. But Kevin, I wonder what else the White House has got in store. Not just to tell people to wait, because in the future it will be better, but what are the remedies that you can produce right now? Oh,
sure. The sanction waiver that Secretary Hassett came out with is just one of many, many tools that we have ready. We've got a whole flow chart of tools to use depending on this or that, and we're ready to move them as soon as we have to, but we're also very optimistic that we're going to be able to get this near-term problem resolved relatively quickly.
The Biden administration, as you know, burned through the SPR, took it down quite dramatically. Is there space left in the SPR to deploy some of that to bring down prices just a bit for consumers?
There is no conversation right now to dip into that, but we've got something like 400 million barrels ready to go if needed. But there is, I re-emphasize, that there has not been a conversation to dip into that yet, because our expectation is that this effort in Iran is way ahead of schedule, and that we understand that there are near-term market fluctuations, but we have our eyes on the horizon, and we think that's where people should be looking to.
Kevin, you say ahead of schedule. Is there a schedule?
Yes, but obviously we're not going to go through the schedule on TV.
The timing of this is so important to people, though. They need to understand the duration to understand how acute the problem will be. It feels very open-ended. It feels different to what we saw in Caracas. Tehran is not Caracas. Iran, as you know, is not Venezuela. Can you assure people this won't be something that goes on for months? This is something that will go on for weeks?
There's nobody that expects that we're going to have a disruption that is anything like what the bears right now fear.
Kevin, the president's also said there'll be naval escorts as well to help tankers get through the Strait of Hormuz. As we understand, tracking the traffic here at Bloomberg, that's grinded to an effective halt as of this morning. What can we do to help those tankers get through that strait, and how quickly can we do it?
This is a matter that is being studied very closely by the military and discussed constantly, and I expect a heck of a lot of progress was made in coming up with a plan that can do exactly what the president has suggested.
There were two dimensions to the president's suggestion, one with the naval escorts and the second piece was insurance. How long do you think it would take to put together something more comprehensive to give people the certainty that these things are insurable?
Well, I think it's really the insurance and the naval effort and the destruction of the Iranian assault capability. Those things are all on the table, and I think that the markets will move forward quickly once it's clear that the U.S. military has resolved those matters.
Kevin, there's another aspect to the price action that's making some people nervous. I'd love your thoughts on it. It's not just the disruption that we're seeing in the Middle East and the disruption to energy supply. There's also issues in private credit. Every day there is a headline about redemptions and certain firms trying to meet redemptions in different ways. We've talked a lot about financial conditions, but are financial conditions tightening in a way that we can't see in private markets? And how are you tracking things?
Oh, we're tracking it very closely. We're keeping an eye on things that are liquid, things that are illiquid, and so on. And right now we see a very well-functioning market that's under a tiny little bit of stress, but for the most part, outside of the one firm that had the significant issue, it looks like everybody's in good shape. But we're following it very closely.
Kevin, how do you track those things? Are you in touch with the big firms right now about what they're doing? Are there certain blow-ups that are making you more concerned than other things? How do you track these things?
There are behaviors that make you concerned, like when you see a radical amount of shorting of assets of firms that are starting to feel some distress and so on. And that's something that we really haven't seen since the financial crisis in 2008, and we're seeing nothing like that kind of activity.
Kevin, Lloyd Blank finds someone we both respect, said he sees echoes of what happened in the financial crisis. Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan has said some people have done some dumb things. Mark Rowan of Apollo has said something similar. Do you think people have done some dumb things that are going to come to the surface later this year?
I think people have made some bets that didn't pay off, but that's kind of what happens in financial markets, right? So whether it's dumb or not, ex post it looks dumb.
Does it pose a risk to all of us?
Excuse me?
Does it pose a risk to all of us? Is there a systemic aspect to some of this?
I believe that there's so much security in that space that they can handle the stress that we're observing right now.